All right, so today we are talking about, we're moving into Module 3, which is cybersecurity threats, vulnerabilities, and attacks. So our goal today is to talk about different types of malware that's out there, as well as some deception. So we talked about social engineering in the past. We're going to break down social engineering even more. And then finally, we're going to talk about different cyber attacks that have happened and kind of what we can do as cybersecurity specialists in order to make sure these things don't happen. So starting off, malware. So there's a couple different types of malware that are out there. This is a very large category, okay? So the first one that we hear all the time is viruses. And viruses attach themselves to it could be an update. It could be software that you think is good, but you get it from this really kind of sketchy website, and there's this virus or there's this malicious code that's also part of it. And you download it, you install it, and then you're kind of giving access to that virus in order to run. And it might not activate right then. It might be a week later that it activates. But again, it has, think of it like just a regular virus that we get. We pick up a bug and it just kind of hangs out in our system until our body fights it off. It's that exact same thing. So viruses look like a legitimate program, and they are attached to that. So that's where hashing comes in. In the last module, we talked a little bit about hashing. So if we have these two identical files, so let's say we're downloading Spotify, and we have the regular Spotify and then Spotify that has the virus on it, those are going to be two different hashes, right? Because those files have been changed from their original way they were coded. So hashes would be one way that we would be able to see if a file has been changed or not. What's that? Hashing is an algorithm that is executed on a file, and then if anything changes in that file, the hash would be different. So a hash is unique to the actual file itself. Or if you even just type in like a couple words and then generate an MD5 hash, that's going to look different than if you even just capitalize one letter there. So even though the message is the same, it has changed in some way, shape, or form. The next one is worms. So worms are going to basically get onto a network, and then they are going to automatically scan and find vulnerabilities in different systems, and they're going to work their way through the entire network, okay? And these are all questions I would, without a shadow of a doubt, that you are going to have questions that says, what's an example of X? This happened. What is that? Is this a worm, a Trojan horse, a virus? So you guys need to know the differences between them. So a virus, again, it's going to have malicious code that is on a legitimate program. Worms are going to get onto a network, and then it's going to kind of scan for other vulnerabilities, and it's going to move them, from device to device. And it's worth pointing out, worms no longer require user participation. Okay, so once they get on that network, they're now smart enough to keep working their way through and automatically scanning. Let's say it finds a vulnerability on a system, it'll then move on to that system, and it'll keep kind of going throughout. Users don't have to do anything in order for those worms to keep moving through the network. The next one is a Trojan horse. This is going to be something like too good to be true. So as soon as you download this file, so everybody knows the original history of the Trojan horse, where they couldn't get in past the walls. They said, hey, here's this big shiny horse as a gift. So they're like, cool. They roll it inside, and then all of a sudden, all these soldiers come out of the horse. They take over the castle or wherever they were, and they were able to get access. It's that exact same thing. So we have let's say an online game, for example. You download it, and then all of a sudden you start getting all these pop-ups on your machine, and you're like, damn, like that was a Trojan horse. That was meant to, I thought it was something too good to be true, and then turns out, it was the bad software. We talked a little bit about a logic bomb in the last module. So a logic bomb is going to be, a lot of times it's an insider threat. So you could have a sysadmin that plants a logic bomb, and then whenever their account, say, is no longer there, so they get fired, it'll automatically blow up and take down the entire system with it, okay? So it's something that will sit there until something happens. It could be at a certain time it's going to happen. It could be a certain date, or it could be a certain user interaction that happens, okay? So this will happen a lot of times if there's going to be, like if I were targeting a company and I wanted all of these things to happen at one time. We've all seen it in like the thriller movies where there's like 2 or 3 guys in a room and you have like this, a bunch of people come up and they all have like eyes on the target, and then all of a sudden they shoot at the same time and then they all go down. It's that same idea. So you could have multiple logic bombs throughout a company that all trigger kind of at the same time and take down a lot of, like, whether it's the grid, electric grid or power or different like water, stuff like that. That's what logic bombs are there for. But honestly, the way I've seen them the most is with an insider threat, and it's kind of like a pissed off sysadmin or a tech person that does it. Ransomware we talked about, so it's going to encrypt data, and then they're basically going to try to sell you back the key. I gave a couple examples in the last module with some people that I sat on a panel with that actually had to go in, like, get a briefcase full of Bitcoin and pay these people in order to get their stuff unlocked. But what happens is, you're basically using, whether it's a virus, whether it's a worm, whether it's anything from that first page, and then the result is ransomware. Okay, so that virus gets onto your computer, that Trojan horse gets onto your computer, and then all of a sudden all your data is encrypted. That's when it becomes ransomware, because they're holding your files. They're holding your files captive, and you'll have, like, when it first came out, like, we were able to break some of that encryption because it was really like kind of low level stuff. Like they were using like MD5 hashes or easily crackable encryption, but they've gotten a lot more sophisticated. And it's literally, you could have a computer, a super high powered, server farm trying to crack this encryption, and it's just not going to work. Like, it's literally, you're locked out. The next thing is a backdoor or a rootkit. So back in the day, we had there was actually a backdoor that was in Microsoft Windows for a really long time, and it uses SMB, or the small message block, and the FBI used it quite a bit in order to, FBI, NSA, I kind of use those, the Fed, Big Brother, use these a lot in order to access computers. You don't see it as often now, especially after like Windows 7, like Windows 7 end of life. So with Windows 10, we really don't see it used as much. But it was something that backdoor was there, and like the government used it quite a bit. And it wasn't until someone leaked out, hey, by the way, there's this exploit out there, that then the rest of the hacker community kind of started using it as part of their scans and whatnot. But it was coded in there for a way to, for the software developers to access that information. Okay, so that's what a backdoor is. You don't really see it as much anymore. You will see it used for if somebody attacks a system. So I've cleaned systems before, and they have left a backdoor on there. So they might create a new user in Active Directory as kind of their backdoor. So they hacked one user, and then as soon as they got access, they'll create another user in the directory. So that way they can always come back and access it a different way should they're be found on a system. The other one is rootkit. Okay, so let's break that word down. Okay, rootkit. So you guys probably haven't studied like in depth how hard drives work, but you have, the way a hard drive actually functions is the first portion boots up, and then you'll choose your operating system. Okay, so when we're installing an operating system onto a computer, we still have those first little bits. We have to still tell our BIOS, which is the embedded software on our laptops or our computers. We have to tell it, hey, you need to go to this hard drive, and you need to boot into the OS, okay? So what a rootkit will do, it'll actually be put into a place where it's before it loads the operating system. So if we're running antivirus software on the actual operating system itself, is it going to find a rootkit? No, because it was installed before that, right? So the computer boots up, the rootkit boots up, and then the Windows machine will boot up. So this rootkit, you could scan it for days, and it looks super clean. You have to have specific software that's meant to scan that boot sector of that hard drive in order to remove that rootkit. Rootkits it's a catch-22 in that they're super easy to remove, but you never know they're there, okay? So it's kind of a give and take, because we would scan machines when they were leaving Geek Squad, and somebody would forget to scan use the rootkit tool, and then we'd reboot it, and all of a sudden the infection was back. We're like, WTF? Like, we've removed this like 4 times, and then someone was like, hey, did you run the rootkit? And then we found the code, we removed it, and then we had a clean system after that. So what we see more and more now is the use of email, chat applications, social media in order to get these different software programs on there. But anymore, like if I'm developing a virus, am I going to take the time to build it for Windows, Mac, who knows what version of Android, iOS? Like there's in order to be a virus manufacturer these days, it's really hard in order to have it affect multiple things. So that's where you're going to get into social engineering, which to me, I put kind of spam under that, in that they're sending you information in hopes that you download or get that software on your computer. But it's a lot easier to target a human, okay? Because humans are going to be the weakest part of any security system. So spam is going to be unsolicited, most of the time junk mail, but they're hoping that you open it so that way it can run some type of malicious code in order to get that software on your computer. And it might just be a browser extension. It might be the promise of a free VPN, whatever that might look like. They're spamming you with it in hopes that you'll open up that information or open up that email to get that code. Spyware. So spyware is meant to be installed on your computer just to keep an eye on what you're doing in hopes that it gets, it'll have what's called a keylogger. So it'll, keep track of the different keys that you enter into your computer. So it'll get your passwords that way, what websites you go to. So then maybe we want to, kind of do a spear phishing campaign, which we're targeting one user. We might start off with getting a keylogger on that machine, so that way we can get more information about our user. But spyware just kind of keeps an eye on your system and then reports that information back, okay? Moving on from there, we have adware and scareware. So adware is when they're trying to, they put a bunch of ads and stuff up on the screen in hopes that they can generate revenue off of you. So instead of just getting one ad on a website, you might all of a sudden get 10 show up, and you're like, what the hell? I have to keep closing all these things just to get to my website. This website sucks. Well, probably not a website. You probably have some type of adware on your computer, because every time that ad shows up, they're getting paid. Okay, so they just load your system down with a bunch of ads on the website that you're on. They're not necessarily, adware is bad. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not bad, but it's not as bad as the spyware, the stuff that's actually watching what you're doing for malicious intent. It's there to just generate as much revenue as possible. The next thing is scareware. This is the one thing that I would say most people over the age of 40 fall for the most, in that they go to a website and then all of a sudden what they do is they'll animate the bottom right corner of the website, right over here. Let's say this was a website we were viewing. They might animate this little window that pops up that looks a lot like a Windows notification from Defender, and then you're like, oh shit, it says I have 4 viruses. So then you click on it thinking it's a Microsoft, Windows Defender or whatever antivirus you're using, and then it'll take you to this website, and you're like, hell yeah, I'm going to spend $20 to get rid of this freaking virus. I hate computers. And all of a sudden, now they have your credit card information, and chances are they probably put some type of spyware on your system in order to get even more information on you. So whether that's your bank account details, your logins, stuff like that. So when it comes to scareware, the best thing you can do, especially if you see it a lot when you're looking for different resources, whether that's music, movies, books, stuff like that, or if you use the website that's really common, 123 movies, you want to watch a stream, you'll notice if you go to that website, you click on it and all of a sudden an ad will pop up, and then you have to close that ad, and then you click play again, and then an ad pops up, and then you close again. And a lot of times those ads are going to say, hey, you have a virus, you have to download our VPN right now. I'm like, what's a VPN going to do for virus? Your ads don't even make sense. If you're going to scare me, do something good. So, say that I have viruses and offer to download, virus on my Mac that doesn't get viruses. So, what's that? Absolutely. So again, the scareware to me is really easy to pick out. But that's one thing that, if a user outside the military, military is you shut it down, you remove it from the network, and you escalate it. But your own home PC, like the best thing to do is just instantly just restart your computer, because with the scareware, unless you like physically download something and run something, chances are you're pretty safe. And Windows Defender has gotten a lot better than it was. Windows Defender, like I've created a couple viruses and stuff just to test like in class, and it does a really good job at detecting. So to me, Windows Defender is pretty solid. But like for my mom's computer, like she absolutely has another antivirus on top of just Windows Defender. But if you're a responsible user, I think Windows Defender is plenty good. Okay, so now we're going to jump into social engineering. This is one of my favorite things because, again, it's super easy. Users are stupid at the end of the day. Phishing is just a very baseline. So think of phishing like casting a net, okay? So we're going to try to get, we're going to use information off of different social media websites in order to, get as much information about our targets as possible. And then we are going to launch our phishing campaign. So we're going to say, hey, I just started working here, or hey, I'm stuck in, like the ones that still get me is people will do the whole gift card thing. Like how is like seeing an email asking for gift cards not like this huge red flag for people? But they still fall for it. Like they still fall for it every single day. But they're just disguising as being a legitimate, whether that's a legitimate business or a legitimate email account, and they're trying to get you to do something, okay? Now, again, phishing is a net where we're going to try to do that with a lot of different accounts. We might try to just blast it out to an entire company. Where you start to see better results is when you do what's called spear phishing, okay? So think about casting a net versus just spear phishing. Like taking a spear and you see your target and boom, you're getting that fish. It's the exact same thing. So with spear phishing, we're going to do a little bit more OSINT, data mining. So OSINT stands for open source intelligence gathering. So that's stuff that we can mine online in order to find information about you. So there's tons of OSINT tools that are out there that'll help us kind of find this information, and we're going to tailor it specifically to you, okay? When we are going towards someone that is higher ranking, so let's say we were going off of someone, in our case, like E8 or above, okay? That's where it's going to become whaling, okay? So whaling is when you have this exec or someone of higher power that we're trying to get their information because higher power, they probably have more access to different websites, okay? In business world, chances are those sometimes are the least tech savvy as well. When you're starting to target the C level, they might see something and be like, hey, you need to approve this right now, click here. They're like, cool, click here, move on with their day without actually going to see who it was from. There will 100% be a question that asks you, every test that I've taken, A+, Net+, all the cybersecurity ones, have something about whaling. The key things are an executive, CEO, a CFO, Chief Financial Officer. If you see that in the question and one of your options is whaling, then 100% that's it. If whaling is not there, but spear phishing is, then you would choose spear phishing as the next best option. Does that make sense? Cool. Farming, you don't really see very much. Vishing is when we are using phones. So it's voice phishing. So this is all those annoying calls that we get in order to get us to buy something. That's going to be vishing. So a couple other ways that we can try to get data onto a user that we're targeting. Maybe we're trying to get access to a different website. We can use plugins as a way to get in there. So with plugins, the way that we're going to target it, we're going to say, hey, on the website, we're going to have a pop-up that comes up and says, you need to update your Adobe Flash in order to see this website. So Flash isn't even freaking used anymore, but people are still falling for those little icons that say you must update your browser or you must update your plugins, okay? So that should be another red flag for you. SEO poisoning. Anybody know what SEO stands for? Search engine optimization, absolutely. So it used to be a lot easier, but search engine optimization is when you're getting you understand the algorithm well enough to put your page on the top listings of what someone's looking for. Okay, so right now the way it should be done by the amount of people that like go to your content and stay on your content, but there's ways to kind of trick the algorithm. So that's what SEO poisoning is. They go through and they use legitimate SEO tactics, but they're putting their illegitimate website higher than the actual legitimate website, because a lot of times, especially like smaller businesses, suck at SEO. So they're able to kind of go a little bit higher, so that, because when people go to a website, we usually click on the first link, right? Because we're like, boom, 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 oh, yep, there it is, next. And from there, we can kind of take that user to a totally different place, maybe get them to enter in their login information, set up a fake looking website in order for us to get that information. A browser hijacker, you don't see this as much, but browser hijackers are basically going to take control over all of the web browsing that happens on the machine and then kind of control it to our own, again, our own fake website. But instead of doing search engine optimization, we're actually putting something in their browser that's redirecting them. So we're actually using code in order to get them where we want to be. So social engineering, I keep mentioning it, but it's when it's a totally non-technical way. Basically, we're talking our way into a company or a person. We're using little bits of information, and then we're piecing them together in order to get someone to do what we want them to do, okay? So part of this is something called pretexting, okay? So in my example, I talked about Subway before, okay? So pretexting would be me calling the secretary and saying, hey, just wanted to let you know this is the Ashland City Chamber of Commerce. We appreciate everything you do for the community. We're actually going to have someone stop by, and today's lunch, we want to provide you guys with lunch. Someone will be there this afternoon dropping off subs for you guys, for all, let's say, the teachers that are in the district. Cool, thanks. Hang up. So then I show up in my Subway uniform with subs that I just went and bought. And they're already assuming, like, they know that I'm going to be there, right? So I've already gone through, and I've kind of pretexted in that there's a reason that I'm there in order to gain access, okay? So pretexting traditionally is me saying, hey, I'm from your insurance company. I just need to verify you. Go ahead and give me your username and password. It's like, you called me. Like, I'm not giving you that information, but people do. And they are able to get a lot of information that way from people, especially if they're not tech savvy or they're not trained in these different things. And I feel like we all know what quid pro quo is, which is something, hey, if you do this for me, then I'll do this for you. That's also used as a form of social engineering. So some of the things that you'll see on the Security Plus is you're walking through, and and this possible new employee is looking at the screens of people as they go through. What is that an example of? And that would be shoulder surfing. Means we're looking over their shoulder to see what they're surfing. That old term used for going to websites was surfing the web. It's the same idea. We're looking over their shoulder to kind of see if we can see what tools they're using or what the usernames and passwords are. Dumpster diving is very similar in that we are going to, go through dumpster in order to find like different documents, anything that could help us with our attack, and that's used quite a bit actually. Yeah.
Would RFID scanning be counted as well?
Kind of. So I don't know if that would come up with shoulder surfing, because shoulder surfing is specifically looking over. Same thing with dumpster diving, in that you're specifically going, like on the test, they're going to ask you specifically. But RFID scanning could be a totally different attack. So as you're walking through, you could have, you might take on a persona of like an elevator technician, and you could be walking through the building, and then you could be scanning for those different RFID tags in order to copy them. Yep. Piggybacking and tailgating, that's when we are going to make our way in. So let's say I didn't do the whole pretexting calling ahead of time, but I'm walking in with donuts, and I wait till I'm like right behind somebody walking into the building, and I have my hands full, and they look back at you, and we're human, right? Like, naturally, we want to hold the door for someone because they have stuff in their hands. And even if they ask questions, oh, I'm new here, I want to start, oh, I haven't seen you before. Oh, I'm starting today, I wanted to start off on a good foot. Oh, come on in, welcome to the team, oh, I love it here. And like, I would have that conversation, like, what do you like about working here? What's the favorite part of your job? Like, what should I watch out for? And like, I then make them the subject matter expert, because then they're sharing with me, and it makes them feel good, right? They're helping this new employee, when in reality, I'm there to attack. Like, I'm trying to get into the building. So that's what piggybacking and tailgating is. Or if there's a physical gate, I just literally pull behind them, and they scan their badge, and I just drive in kind of with them. Because the gate's open. And most people don't really think about it, especially like if it's early morning and there's kind of a rush at the gate, and there's not like an actual person running the gate. It's just like a card gate. It's easier to kind of get through, because again, the gates are built that they don't want to hit cars, so they'll just stay up. We've seen that before. Another thing you could actually do with that is if you get there early, like before anybody shows up, a lot of times you can just put tape over the, if it's just like the standard reflection where it's just reflecting the laser beam back, you could actually put tape there, and after the first person goes through, that gate will stay open because it's seeing that there's someone there. It's not getting the, it's not getting that laser to come back, so that gate will literally just stay open. We actually have that at the where I work, and I pointed it out so many times. They just don't care. But it's fun for the kids to do because they feel like they're getting away with murder. And then, yeah, we already went over that with email stuff. Okay, so talking about attacks, we're getting towards the end here. So denial of service attacks. So there's two different DOSs that you need to keep an eye on, okay? So denial of service is when we send information from one machine to another machine. We just send a bunch of traffic, and it's like, I don't know what to do, so I can only focus on you right now. I can't focus on anyone else. And then all of a sudden, it's going to basically turn off the service for everybody else, okay? So single DOS, or a single denial of service, it was really easy to mitigate against, okay? Because we can say, well, as soon as we notice that DOS, we're just going to be like, okay, ignore all traffic from this source. And then boom, the website comes back up, okay? So back in the day, that was a little harder to do. So now what we've seen is what's called a DDoS. A distributed denial of service attack. Distributed means we're going to take these 5,000 machines that we have access to in our botnet, and we're going to send all this traffic there. So now we have to try to turn off all these different botnets that are then attacking us, okay? So how do you get a botnet? Like, how do you have access to it? Well, remember, at the beginning, we talked about worms. We talked about viruses. We talked about different ways to get our code onto a machine. Well, the same thing is true. We just get that code on there. We just don't touch anything until we need it for a botnet. And then all of a sudden, those machines will call back to the command and control server, or the C2 server, and then we can activate all of those machines and say, fire. And basically all this traffic, whether it's just ping requests, it might just be HTTP requests, all attack this machine, and it takes it down from everybody, okay? So make sure you know the difference between a DOS and a DDoS. DOS, one machine attacking. DDoS, distributed, multiple machines. Yep.
So DDoS is like a bunch of sleeper agents for their computer.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and then they're all activated at once, and then they attack. If you've watched the Jason Bourne series, how they get the little thing in them and then they get activated to do whatever it is they need to think out, it's the exact same thing. They're all just sitting there waiting, and then all of a sudden, it's time for us to attack. And they all just send traffic to that host. And then all of a sudden, you'll just be like on your computer, be like, it's really slow. But, you look at your bandwidth, like, what is using so much bandwidth? Well, this machine is running behind the scenes, whether that's a rootkit, whether that's just malicious code on your system. And that's kind of that key, like, okay, there's definitely something on my machine. We need to get this taken, we need to get this looked at. Sniffing we talked about with Wireshark is a great way to kind of sniff the network. Let me go ahead and pop up Wireshark so you can kind of see an example of what it looks like. There shouldn't be anything else on this network because I was on my hotspot until it died. But I'll at least show you kind of what types of stuff you can see with a packet sniffer. So Wireshark is something that you can download. It's free, and it's actually really, really good in order to see kind of what's going on with your network. Or if, let's say, you learn something in class and you want to actually see like the packets and stuff, Packet or Wireshark is a great way to actually see the different things that are going on. So these are the different connections that are on the machine. So you can see how they started, picking up. We're starting to see some traffic going on. These are virtual. Need to get to our actual. This is loopback. So there's our Wi-Fi. So I'm going to select this network interface, and then this is the actual traffic that's going on the network right now. Okay. So this is the source. This is our destination. So you'll notice, has anybody gotten to the point where you're learning about IPv6 yet, or not yet? IPv4. Okay. So if you watch over here, you'll see IPv4 addresses that you've used, and then boom, you'll also see IPv6 addresses. I'm connected to my phone. The cell providers are mostly on IPv6, whereas most machine, like regular internet, is still on IPv4. So I'll go ahead and stop that right now. Let's just look at some of these packets that are going through. So we have DNS. So this is frame number 543. We can go through and see the different type of encapsulation. So in this case, it's Ethernet. We can go and actually see what the request was. So this had a question or a query. So let's see what that query was. We can actually go through, and it's looking for lencr.org. Okay, so we could sit here and watch all of the data kind of go across. Here's an HTTP request. So my computer was making a request to an actual website itself. So then let's see if we can actually see what website. Oh, it's that same LENCR. Not really sure what LENCR is. We can see that we had a client key got exchanged. So that had to do with TLC or TLS, I mean. This 443, so this was source port 443. So this has to do with the fact that it's going through my phone, and my phone is doing what's called NAT, or network address translation. So that's just saying, hey, this is what it should go from this port. It needs to go to that other port there. But if we logged into, like if I logged into a standard, like a regular Cisco switch using Telnet, remember we talked about last time how Telnet is in plain text, I would be able to see that username and password as it goes through. So that's what sniffing is. So if I jumped onto Boingo right now, and I don't know how Boingo is separated, but I would be able to watch the traffic going across, and then I would be able to, chances are something is going to be unencrypted, and I would be able to see like what websites people are going to. Okay. Spoofing is it's just a common term for impersonation. So I'm going to say this is a bad website or a good website when in reality it's a fake website. Man in the middle, I'm going to sit in the middle. We talked about this last time. I'm going to be at the coffee shop, and I'm going to put a access point up, and you're going to connect to me before you go to a website. But a man in the middle attack could also be a fake website. You know, I can put myself on this network, and whenever a DNS query goes, I could say, hey, send that DNS query to me, and then I'll send you something back that's poisoned because I want you to go to my web server instead. Okay, so man in the middle is where we literally are in between the, the good website that they want to go to and them. We're going to be right in the middle, and we're going to take their data, and then we're going to send them poisoned things back, or we're just going to sit there and grab credentials and then use those credentials at another time. 0-day attack. Anybody know what a 0-day is? Absolutely. So 0-day means there's a bug in the software and the company hasn't had a chance to fix it yet. So right now Google Chrome is really, really bad. So if you have Google Chrome on your machine, make sure you're updating it constantly. I got notifications in the last 3 weeks. I think I've gotten like 6 or 7 notifications about different versions of Chrome. So they fix it, but then there's another vulnerability. There's another vulnerability. And 0 days aren't just software either. There was actually a pretty famous 0-day for hotel rooms. If you look on the bottom of some models of key readers, there was a phone jack, and that's what they used to program the actual reader itself. Well, come to find out, all of those were using like a default credential. So you could literally just like plug a phone into it and console into it from your computer and have full control over that door lock at hotels. And like they were told about it like a year before this 0-day attack was actually put out there. Because at the end of the day, you have those gray hat hackers that look at that. I don't know, maybe they got drunk and passed out, and then they looked at the bottom of that door lock and they're like, holy shit, there's a phone line there. Wonder what I could do with that. And they plug it in and they kind of pin it out and they see, oh, I can send data. And when I send data, it just randomly unlocks. Like, this is crazy. Well, they're that gray hat in that, you know, they didn't mean anything. It was that challenge, like, what does this do? So then they go to the vendor and say, hey, like, do you have a bug bounty program? Like, this is a big vulnerability. And if nothing happens, the only way to put pressure, because at that point, people are unsafe, right? Like, you're in your hotel room, and people could just plug in. If the wrong person got access to that, like, they could let themselves into any room and rob them. And so in this case, that guy gave them, I think, almost a year, and they never said anything. So at that point, you go live with it, and you start telling people about it, because you have to apply pressure to that company or nothing's going to happen. So that's that kind of hacktivist, kind of gray hat mentality, in that you're hacktivist in that you are advocating for the safety of people. That's one way that 0 days are kind of a good thing, in that you're forcing the companies to get them patched to keep people's information safe. And if a company doesn't patch, like Microsoft patches usually every Tuesday, but sometimes they'll rush out emergency kind of patches to computers in order to make sure that these 0 days are taken care of ASAP. Keyboard logging, you could do that via software or even hardware devices. Fun fact, I think I showed you guys before, but there's these things called, what's the name of them? They look like a fake, or they look like a regular iPhone cable, but they actually log all of your stuff. So, PWN cables. And you basically just leave them laying out. Like here, it would be awesome, because like I can literally leave a iPhone cable sitting out in the tire pit. You know someone's gonna grab that. Like without a doubt, they're like, free cable, hook me up. And then all of a sudden, like wirelessly, I get all of their information that goes on their phone. Like it just sits there and, you know, sniffs information. So again, the devices that are out there for like key logging, there's one attack that you do all the time is USB rubber ducky, or fake USBs. They're so cheap, you just leave 5 of them laying around, and first thing people do are like, oh cool, free flash drive, plug it into my computer, and boom, you now have remote access to their machine. So they're built into, I've seen them built into power strips before too. I've seen them built into like backup power, because what gets plugged into those devices usually is servers, so it's at least getting you kind of into the server room to attack those machines. Smishing, that's using when you get those random cell phone text messages, hey, would you like to do XYZ, or click here, there's this lewd photo of you on the internet. They're using SMS to do that. That is smishing. And that's going to be one of those kind of easy questions that you're going to get on Security Plus, because it literally says, smishing. Like it looks like SMS, like it's in the actual name itself. So you should just have a kind of a high-level idea of what smishing is. With Security Plus, you're not going to have to know how to carry out these attacks. You're not going to have to know what tools you would use for a smishing attack. You just have to be able to identify what type of attack is. Somebody received a message to click on a link via text message. What is it? Smishing. Like that's something that you would see on Security Plus. Rogue access points we talked a little bit about last time with Wi-Fi pineapples. RF jamming, we talked a little bit about that with de-authenticating from the good web or the good access point, so that way they'll join ours. But jamming is just when you're sending information kind of on that same bandwidth. Did I tell you guys about the whole microwave and live streaming that my wife ended up doing to me? So my wife actually did a DOS attack on me. I was live streaming during COVID. I was live streaming every day for the company that I worked for. And then all of a sudden one day it's like I'm watching like my bandwidth just tank all of a sudden, right? And I'm like I know we're in the rural Ohio, but like I always have, like I've been doing this now for like 3 weeks. I've never had a bandwidth issue. And I walked downstairs. I'm like, man, that was so weird. Like, did you notice anything with the wireless? She's like, no, I've been cooking lunch. I was like, what are we having for lunch? Oh, I microwaved some baked potatoes. Awesome. Do you know what's at the same frequency as our wireless? Microwaves. 2.4 gigahertz, baby. So she didn't realize she was doing it. but she turned on the microwave. So all of these 2.4 gigahertz waves are now going throughout our house and the wireless routers downstairs. So all of a sudden, like, basically cut off my access upstairs. Like, I was able to still finish the live stream and stuff, but I just saw this huge drop because she had basically she had been jamming the signal. So again, those are things that you can do. Like, there's little handheld like RF jammers that you can access. But I will point out, RF jamming is very illegal, especially if it's done at like a movie theater, for example. Like, if you were to RF jam at a movie theater, like, game over, you're going to prison. Like, wherever there is like a mass amount of people, because by doing that, you're cutting off their ability to call if there's an emergency. So even though we would love no cell phones to go off during the next Marvel movie, you can't just go in there and like turn on your RF jammer, because that's all the government goes through and maintains, like what signals you're allowed to put out or transmit. Blue jacking and blue snarfing. I think we talked about this before, did we not? You guys remember the difference between them? Okay, so blue jacking is when we are sending, think of it like carjacking, in that we're just going to jump in the car. It's the same thing. We're sending unauthorized messages via Bluetooth to devices. Snarfing is when we're actually pulling information off of it. So when I think of the word like snarf, I think of like suction for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it was just from the studying and whatnot. But snarfing is we're like pulling information off of there. So we're copying contact information. We're copying different files that are on there via Bluetooth. We have to be within about 30 feet to do Bluetooth attacks. But in a crowded area, pretty easy to do. All of a sudden they see this link and they're like, oh yeah. Or hey, this device would like to pair. Or AirDrop is one that we see a lot. And all of a sudden we can pull contact lists, emails, and then we can kick off our social engineering attack. So we're going to scratch the surface with wireless. You will have to know, as part of Security Plus, the differences between the different versions of like WPA2 versus WPA3 versus WPA1. But again, this class is meant to give you kind of the overarching, and then we'll take the practice test and we'll kind of see where you need to shore it up a little bit as far as before you take the test. WEP is going to be the absolute weakest form of authentication that you'll see. A question on the Security Plus is, a user has WEP. What is something that can be done to strengthen their Wi-Fi posture? Get rid of WEP. Use anything but WEP. The way it was designed, it worked well when wireless was kind of a new thing, but it's super easy to break. I have 6th graders come into my classroom, and we go through a lab where they break WEP encryption. Super, super easy. WPA 1 and 2, they're a little bit harder to break, but still very much possible. There's an application called Cow Patty and Cactus. I think Cactus is the other one, that make it pretty easy to use, but it still could take a while. Big company, it would take minutes. Home Wi-Fi, going to take days in order to break that WPA or WPA2 encryption. But if you see anything like WPA1 is used, what can you do? Do WPA2. WPA2 is used. What can you do to make it better? WPA3. Okay, they do increment in that way as far as getting more secure, or they'll use different hashing algorithms, different encryption types. That's the kind of that next step into the higher levels of encryption. Another thing for more for like industry or enterprise rather, you might see something called Radius. Radius is where we are using the domain controller, like we had talked about before, for users, and you type in your username and password that you would use to access your machine. Radius encryption is going to use those credentials in order to log in, and that's a much more secure way than just passing out a Wi-Fi password. So kind of like we use for Boingo, you have that username and password. It's the same thing for Radius. A term that you need to know is DMZ. That is the demilitarized zone. You'll hear that word again once we talk about like firewalls and stuff. A DMZ is an area that's not necessarily on the network, It's kind of put off here to the side, and it's its own network, and you put like your web servers and stuff there because you know they're going to be attacked all the time, and you don't want to bring those infections or those attacks inside your network. So you create what's called a DMZ, or a demilitarized zone, which is just outside of your networks, and you see that sometimes with the wireless access points actually have that ability to do that as well. I was going to say, this should be like the last. Yep, this is the last thing we have to talk about. So I'm going to go through this. These are things that you're definitely going to have to study more of because there is a lot of, like, I would say like 15 to 20% of Security Plus, they pull from these slides. They just go a little bit more in depth. So you have to be able to spot these types of attacks and be able to say what it is, okay? So cross-site scripting, you see this with web applications, and what happens is you find a vulnerability on a website, and then we inject client-side scripts, and then the user will view it, and then they'll click on something and you'll be able to get access to their username, passwords. You'll be able to, the users just, they think it's just normal because it's all behind the scenes. These are code. This is code that we're injecting in order to make the website do something else. So we find a vulnerability that says, hey, if we enter this weird code, it'll then email us a copy of all of the users. Okay, so we would then have a browser extension or some way to get this client-side code to launch, and then we would then get the information that we need. Okay, I'm going to post a couple videos that go in depth. In depth meaning like it's still overview of cross-site scripting, but instead of us taking 15 minutes just to talk about cross-site scripting in here, I'll do individual videos. So when it comes time for you to like really buckle down and study for the Sec Plus, you'll have those videos to look back on. Code injection we mostly see with SQL, which is the structured query language. When you have a website, you have the website or the HTML, and then the background, like if it's storing a bunch of data, that's either going to be stored in SQL or a NoSQL, basically a data source. Think of it like an Excel spreadsheet that's behind the scenes, okay? What's that? Node.js, yeah, you're going to have some type of kind of server that holds all of this data. So with code injection attacks, we're going to inject things into like a username and password field in order to get that server to send us information. So you'll have a question on the Security Plus. It'll give you some example code, and you're going to be able to tell it, like, is it cross-site scripting or is it a code injection or SQL injections, what you're most likely to see. You won't have specific like JavaScript or Python, like you won't have specific, it won't get that specific. It's still very much the theory of what does an SQL, like an SQL injection look like, okay? Buffer overflow is when we're actually attacking like a physical machine where we're overflowing, well, I guess it could be on a web application as well. What happens is we don't have infinite resources, whether that's a server, whether that's our program. So at some point it has to do what's called buffering. We've seen buffering on videos, right? Where you have to like sit and wait for it. It'll come up and say buffering. Well, a buffer, doing a buffer overflow is we're going to send that a ton of information, and then it's going to go through and you'll see it kind of tweak out a little bit. And you're hoping that you can get it to tweak out to show a vulnerability that you could then take advantage of. So while it's freaking out that all this information is being sent to it, you're just kind of tiptoeing around, okay? So think about it like at the gates. We're going to send 5,000 cars through the gates, but then we're going to have all those people get out of the gate or get out of their cars and walk towards the gates. The MPs are going to freak out, right? Like, what in the hell is going on? So while the MPs are doing that, we're just going to kind of walk around the gate because we exposed a vulnerability, and then we got into the base, okay? It's that same idea with applications or like physical, like with an actual processor itself. RCEs or remote code executions. This is where kind of like that the botnet that we had, where it uses a command and control server, where we got a Trojan on their machine or some type of malicious code onto their machine, and now we have remote access to do whatever we want with it. We can run any commands that we want. ActiveX in Java, this is plugin stuff. You won't see a ton of this on, ton of specifics like this on the Security Plus. What you'll see is like the fake browser stuff. There's more of the social engineering. Your plugin needs updated. You'll see more of that than you will like specific ActiveX like type of hacks. It's more they want you to know or be able to identify that as an attack surface, that we can fool someone into thinking their plugins need updated. At the end of the day, how can we defend against different application attacks? Keeping things up to date, having good solid code as far as like application development, making sure that we're validating what users are inputting. So for example, like with the SQL hijacking or SQL injection, we're going to validate that they're only putting in like certain things or not putting in certain things. Okay, so with SQL injection, it has a very specific language that goes in. So we're just going to go through and say, hey, like their password should not be equals drop tables, because that's going to delete everything. Okay, because that's what the actual SQL query would be, and we would just block them from doing that. So we're going to sanitize what the inputs are or control what a user inputs. Okay, and again, that'll make a lot more sense once you actually see an example of SQL attacks or code injection type of attacks. Other than that, any questions that we have for what we went over today? A ton of information, I know, especially with the quiz and stuff, but any specific questions about